again, thank you for being here.
I have in my pocket a document that you will never see in the halls of Congress. Although it's on all your tables, it's the United States Constitution. And this is all I'm going to say about civil asset forfeiture. It's the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, fifth of the first 10, of course, known as the Bill of Rights. And a truncated version, anyway, it says that no person shall, sorry, my light's not very good up here, be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. So that's where I stand on civil asset forfeiture. It is patently unconstitutional. And what has happened over the years is, just like all government programs, it was initially designed for major criminals, drug traffickers, and those sorts of people. And what's happened over time is it's expanded now to the point to where pretty much everyone can get caught in the web. And that was not the intention to begin with, but it never should have been implemented to begin with either. So that's my thoughts on that. When asked why he was so successful, Wayne Gretzky replied, the greatest hockey player of all time, replied that he doesn't skate to where the puck is. He skates to where the puck is going to be. And that's something that I'd like to talk about tonight, is the future and what it holds for our country. I believe that we are at an inflection point in our history. There's a really good book, it's called The Fourth Turning by William Strauss and Neil Howe. And in The Fourth Turning, they talk about the cyclical cycle of history. Normally when we think about history, we think about a linear progression of events, right? Things never happen again and just, here we are, and civilization started here and ended up here. That's not how it goes. History follows certain cycles that we can look at, analyze, and deduce, as Mark Twain said, that maybe history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. So according to The Fourth Turning, essentially about every 100 years in the United States and really around the world, society undergoes a major upheaval, a revolution. And the reason it's about every 100 years is because that's about 4 generations. So if you look at our history, I think that we can basically look back and think that that's true, say that's true. If we start with the American Revolution, and the American Revolution, it really was a revolution. It introduced, codified ideas that people are all created equal, with equal rights. Government can't just do anything that it wants. Kings and queens have no more rights than anyone else does, which was a revolutionary idea at the time. It wasn't as clean as we often think, right? And we think, okay, you had the revolution and the colonists won, and then they had this thing called the Articles of Confederation. It didn't work that great, so then we had this Constitution, and then everything was fine. Not quite. There was very vigorous debates about the Constitution. In fact, you had a group of folks, we all know about the Federalist Papers, right? We all have to read those. Well, there's also the Anti-Federalist Papers, who are the folks who were arguing against the Constitution. And when I look at that, they made some pretty good arguments, and some that have actually come to fruition at this point. But the Federalists were the driving force behind the Bill of Rights. And if you ask me, the Constitution is a wonderful document and everything, but the most important part of the Constitution is the Bill of Rights, especially the 9th and 10th Amendments. But especially the 9th and 10th Amendments. And the 9th Amendment, of course, is a catch-all that says, the rights outlined in the rest of the Bill of Rights are not all of them. In fact, we cannot enumerate all of your rights. And the 10th Amendment, which says that the powers not granted specifically to the federal government were reserved to the states or to the people. Well, I'll get to that in a second. Then what happens is we move further away from the revolution, though. Generations begin to forget why these these institutions exist. Okay? So by the time we get to the Civil War in 1860, about 80 years, we undergo another revolution. And what happened during the Civil War was, we can debate about that all we want as far as, everything that goes along with that. But in the end, there was this massive consolidation of power with the federal government. And the 10th Amendment was, in some ways, stripped away. Lots of power went to the federal government, okay? So then we move forward to World War II, which was kind of a continuation of World War I. And what happened in World War II was, really for the first time in its history, America became a world power. And with that came a permanent military-industrial complex, which President Eisenhower warned us against. And again, we can debate about the benefits, the virtues of that, but in the end, we became the world's policeman. And we had to pay for that. So fast forward to today. Currently, we have $23 trillion national debt. Our debt service, every year, what the federal government pays on its debt service, is in the neighborhood of $400 billion. Now keep in mind that the average interest rates that the federal government pays on its debt is 2.15%. So when we hear that the Federal Reserve is not going to raise interest rates, in fact it will lower interest rates, there's a couple reasons for that. Because the economy is addicted to cheap money, as well as if interest rates go up when the federal government rolls that debt over, the debt service could go through the ceiling, which would bankrupt the country. Meanwhile, we see all these other changes coming along. And we see what could be another revolution. But where does it lead? I was at Harvard not too long ago. I didn't get a diploma, unfortunately, but I was at a mayor's conference, and they told me we might get one. And a statistician was there, and granted, this was a liberal source, but they'd done all sorts of polling among young people about their thoughts on various issues. Overwhelmingly, these people supported, and these are just young folks, supported eliminating the Electoral College, very concerned about climate change, very concerned about gun control, advocates for gun control, very attracted to socialism. We all know that, right? So my question is, what does this next upheaval bring us? If we leave young people out, it brings us nothing good. I can tell you that. Because every place around the world that socialism has been tried, it hasn't failed, but it has brought in poverty, misery, and death. One of the greatest quotes that Donald Trump has ever had was when he said, "Venezuela is not an example of socialism implemented imperfectly. It is the example of socialism implemented perfectly." So what we've seen is, at other times in our history, when we've had these revolutions, people have rejected the establishment, the status quo. Okay? They rejected the British Empire. Kind of rejected, a consequence of the Civil War was rejecting the idea of deconsolidated government. Okay? When we look at World War II, rejecting the idea that America stood outside of Europe and the rest of the world, as George Washington told us to do, not get entangled in foreign alliances. As we look at what's coming, the young people are rejecting the very foundation of this country, which is free market capitalism. I think the antidote to that is what the young people in this room are doing, like what my friend Nathan is doing. What we all too often do is we fight. We yell at each other. One of the worst things I've ever seen on Facebook was a snarky post directed at young people saying, "You guys are going to fix the world. You can't even make your own bed." That's not what we need to do. We have to grow, whether you want to call it conservative movement, libertarian, whatever. And in my own mind, it's the Republican Party. We have to grow the Republican Party. And we have to do it among young people. We have to do it among minorities. Because if we look at the demographics, they are shifting. And they are shifting tremendously. And by the time 2024 rolls around, certainly by the time 2028 rolls around, those kids that we're making fun of because they don't make their bed, they're going to be the biggest voting bloc. And they're going to be the ones making the decisions. So my idea, my submission to you, is that we do like what Nathan has done. And instead of fighting with people, we bring people into a community and we talk with them about the issues that all of us face. I've traveled all around the world, and it's pretty amazing. The one thing I found is that despite our cultural differences, despite different beliefs, in some cases, despite different religions, people pretty much want the same thing. They want a decent life for themselves and their kids. We're all people. Why don't we start there? The wonderful thing about what this country is founded on, the ideas that this country is founded on, is it has a place for everybody. To me, the American dream means the ability to live your life without restriction, except you grant people the same rights and ability, and you don't hurt anyone. It's called liberty. It's called freedom. And everybody has a place under that tent. Nathan's doing a great thing with David and the other folks here. And what they do is they just get together with people, nonpartisan, and they talk and they find out about each other as human beings and as people. When we start there first, and we understand we all want to get to the same place. In many cases, we have very different methods for getting there. But when we start from the same place, guess what? People actually listen to each other. Whereas now, all we do is scream and yell and threaten and scare each other. And we dig it deeper and deeper and deeper into our foxholes and throw hand grenades at the other side. And then we wonder why we can't get along. So, for me anyway, it's all about building a bigger movement. And we can do that. It's understanding what people want. At the same token, showing them why a certain way works and another way does not work. And we have to do that. We don't have a choice at this point. So I'll leave you with the words of John F. Kennedy, who said that change is the law of life. And people that look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future. We have a tremendous opportunity in this country. And an opportunity when this inflection point revolution, upheaval, whatever you want to call it, comes, we can fulfill what our founders wanted, which is a free society. And if we don't, things go the other way. So let's not miss this opportunity. I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Thank you for having me here tonight. Congratulations on a very great event.
Ladies and gentlemen, Glenn Jacobs.